Okay, so this will be our part 3 of Adobe Illustrator tutorial. So this is all about text, converting it into outline so that you can reshape each character of a text. And at the same time, we're going to use text and place characters or text on a path and on a shape or inside the shape. And also how to use the knife tool and the perspective grid. Okay, so let's start. So we're going to start with the brush tool and blob brush tool. So those are two brush tools that you can use, and they may seem the same. They may seem the same, but they are different in terms of the vector points or the anchor points. So let's start first with the brush tool. So you can press B or select the brush tool. Okay, so we can use the selection tool. So let's resize the stroke. Okay, so as you can see, if you're going to click using the selection tool or press V, the anchor points or the vector line is at the center of the brush or the line that you created using brush tool. Okay, so that is the brush tool. So the difference between the blob brush tool and with the brush tool is that the blob brush tool do have vector points or anchor points on its edges. Okay, so let's select the blob brush tool. Okay, so this is the blob brush tool, or you can press Shift B. Okay, so that is the blob brush tool. So you can resize using the square bracket. Okay, so when we use the blob brush tool, okay, so the first line that we created on top is created or is being drawn using the brush tool, while the line at the bottom is a line which is drawn using the blob brush tool. So as you can see, if I'm going to use the selection tool again, the vector line is at the center of the brush of the line, while on the blob brush tool, as you can see, the edges of the blob brush tool do have anchor points. So it means that you can reshape the blob brush because you can select different anchor points on its edges and reshape it. Okay, so let's say for example, let's use the direct selection tool or press A. Okay, let's zoom a little bit. Okay, so we have here one of the anchor point of the line created using the blob brush tool. So we can click and reshape. Okay, so that is the difference between the brush tool and the blob brush tool. Okay, so at the same time also, since the vector lines or the anchor points are on the sides or edges of the blob brush, so you can separate or you can change the color of the field and the stroke. Okay, so with the selection tool, select the shape. Okay, so we can now select on the option bar, we can select the fill. Let's say let's change it to red, and the stroke to, let's say, let's turn it into black. Then we can resize. Okay, so we have thickened the size of the stroke of the shape which is created by the blob brush tool. Okay, so, and also when using the blob brush tool and the brush tool, and the blob brush tool, so below the fill and the stroke color here, the fill and the stroke color, so you have option to draw normal. Okay, you have the button here, draw normal, or shift D, or click draw normal. So let's say, for example, I'm going to I'm going to draw a circle. Okay, so this is a circle. Let's remove the fill. Okay, so if the draw normal is selected, if you're going to use either the brush or the blob brush tool, okay, yes, the blob brush tool. So let's say I'm going to pick yellow. Okay, I'm going to pick yellow. So basically, the blob brush tool is okay. Basically the blob brush tool is in front of the circle. Okay, so that is in front of the circle. So let's remove this one. Okay, so let's use the blob brush tool again. Then we can select the draw behind. So let's click the draw behind. Okay, but still we're going to use the yellow color. Okay, then let's brush inside the circle. Well, the size may overlap with the stroke of the circle. So that's okay if the size or the diameter of the brush or the blob brush overlaps with the stroke, because the draw behind is already selected. So what happens here is that when you brush, okay, when you brush, what happens here is that what you brushed on the artboard will be at the back of the object where you stroke, or where you brush the blob brush. Okay, so that's what happens when the draw behind is selected. Okay, so that is used for coloring. Sometimes it is used, or most of the time this is used for coloring artworks. So instead of selecting and changing the color, you can do manual coloring using the blob brush tool, and just to make sure that it does not overlap with the existing strokes, so you can select the draw behind button here. Okay, so we can also use the blob brush tool for shadowing, or if you are creating shadows or opacity on your artwork. So you can use the blob brush tool. So again, so when we did the yellow color here, so we selected the draw behind. So if you're going to use the blob brush tool again, okay, so this is the blob brush tool. Okay, so this is the blob brush tool. Okay, so we can use that one for shadowing your artwork. So let's say, for example, I'm going to brush on the yellow portion here. Okay, so when I brush, so as you can see, it is not visible because you select the draw behind is still selected. So meaning to say, what you draw was behind the yellow color here. Okay, so since we are going to use it as for shadowing, so we can click the draw normal. Okay, let's say, for example, I'm going to draw a line here. Okay, so we can select. Okay, we can select the blob brush and change the opacity. So just go to the transparency panel here. Then you have the opacity, and you can change the value of the opacity. Okay, so that is used for shadows. So you can now change the anchor points. So use the direct selection tool to adjust. Okay, so it depends on your adjustment. Okay, so that is the function of the brush tool and the blob brush tool. Okay, so and by the way also, when you are using the brush tool, you can always change it. Let's change the opacity to 100%. You can always change the, just like with lesson 2, with part 2 of the Illustrator lesson. So you can change the variable width profile, the brush definition, okay, the brush definition, okay. So that is the purpose of the brush tool, the brush tool and the blob brush tool. Okay, so next is we're going to use the pencil tool. Okay, so the pencil tool also allows you to draw a line. So let's make it black. Okay, let's make it black. Okay, the pencil tool works like a brush tool, but there's also a purpose. There's also a purpose when you are using the pencil tool. So aside from drawing a line using the pencil tool, you can use the aside from drawing line using the pencil tool, so you can also use the pencil tool to smoothen the lines, to smoothen the given line. For example, if I've used the brush tool, okay. So this line is created using the brush tool. As you can see, you have pointed corners here. So if you wanted to smoothen the corner, you can use the pencil tool. So first is you have to use the selection tool or press V. Click the selection tool. Click the line. Okay. So you already click the line. So once selected, select the pencil tool. Okay. So all you have to do is just draw a curve from the corner, from the portion which do have corners on your line. So let's say for example this portion, we're going to draw a curve using the pencil tool. Again, you have to use the selection tool, select the line, click the pencil tool, then draw a curve to correct or to smoothen the curve. So click and draw a curve. Okay. Okay. So that is the purpose of the pencil tool. So not only to draw a line, but also to smoothen curves. Okay. So next is we're going to work on text. So let's create a new file. So what we're going to do next is we're going to create outlines or text outlines. So because if we're going to use the type tool, so let's make the artboard in landscape. Okay. Okay, so we're going to use the type tool to add text. Okay, so I'm going to change the font. I'm going to make it a little bit thicker. So we're going to use the Arial text font. Okay, let's make it black. Okay, so we have the type tool or the text on our artboard, but what if we wanted to change the shape of a single character from that text? So you cannot do that if that is still a type tool or a text. So what we're going to do is we're going to convert it into outline. So we can use the selection tool or press V, then select the text. So then right click again, use the selection tool or press V, select the text, right click, and create outlines. Okay? So, but as you can see, when you select the text, so all of the characters are still selected. So you have to ungroup the text so that characters will now be individual characters. Okay? So since that is already an individual character, so as you can see, you have the anchor points on the edges of the character. You can now reshape the character. So in this case, the letter that is being selected is the letter T. So you have anchor points here. So you can now change the shape of or reshape the character using the direct selection tool. Okay? So let's say for example, I'm going to click this anchor point. The upper left corner of the letter T. I'm going to select the anchor point and reshape this one. Okay? So same also with the upper right anchor point. And this anchor point. Okay? So we already changed how or reshape the character because that is turned into shape. So because that is how you convert the type tool or the text into outline. Okay? So you can now reshape each individual characters in your text. So that's converting text into outline or creating outlines. Okay? So next is we're going to use the area type tool. Okay? The area type tool lets you add text inside a particular shape. So let's say for example, I'm going to use the star tool. I'm going to create a star. Okay? So I'm going to use the area type tool. So select the area type tool, then click inside the shape. So let's reduce the font. Now we Now we can now type text inside the shape. So let's say multimedia. Let's reduce the font size. Okay. Let's copy paste the text. Okay. So the text is now inside the shape. So that's how the area type tool works. Okay, so next is we're going to use the type on a path tool. So we're going to place or add text on a particular path. So let's say, for example, I'm going to draw a circle. Okay, so use the type on a path tool. Okay, so click on the edge of the circle. Click on the edge of the circle. Then as you can see, there's a curved line there. So meaning to say you can now type on the edge of the circle or the path created by the circle. So just let's click. Okay, so let's resize a little bit. And let's type multimedia 2D design concept. Okay, so you already did typed a text on the edge of the circle. So what if you wanted to move the text? So all you have to do is just look for the blue line. So in this case, this blue line which is perpendicular to the circle shape. So just place your mouse pointer on the blue line. Then once the mouse pointer change to the symbol with the arrow, so you can just click and move. Okay, you can move the text on the path. At the same time also, you can move it inside. Just click and drag to the inside of the circle. So that is now inside the circle. Okay, so that is the text type on the path tool and the area type tool. Okay, so next is we're going to use the perspective grid. So let's create a new file. So what we're going to do is we're going to place a text first. Okay, so let's type multimedia. Let's resize the font. So let's make it a little bit thicker. So I'm going to use the Arial font. Then make it black. Okay. So this will be our text. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide these characters into two halves. So the first half is the MUL and the half of letter T, and the other half would be the remaining characters together with the half of the letter T. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide the letter T into half. Okay, so before we divide this in, before we can divide this one, so since this is
created using a type tool, we're going to convert it into outline. So select the text, then right click, create outlines. Okay, so this is now converted into shape. But since we are only editing the letter T, or we are going to divide the letter T into half, so we have to ungroup. Okay, we have to ungroup so that we can select individual characters. Okay, in this case, we're going to select letter T. Okay, so once the letter T is selected, so we are going to divide it into half. So for us to know to have a guide on how we are going to cut in the middle of the letter T, so we can use the ruler. We can press Ctrl R, or you can use the view ruler. Let's hide it again. Hide rulers, or view rulers and show rulers. Okay, so since this is already selected, we're going to have place a guide on the middle of the letter T. So click on the left guide, or the left ruler, click and drag, and position it at the center of the letter T. Okay, so this will serve as our guide. So what we're going to do is select the letter T again. Okay, we're going to use the knife tool. So that is under the eraser tool. So we have the knife tool here. Okay, so if we're going to use the knife tool on the freehand mode, so if you're going to click, it is very difficult to straighten the line. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the Alt key. So press and hold the Alt key. Then click on the starting position. Then go to, as you can see, if I'm going to drag, so we are creating a straight line using the knife tool. So let's go to the end point, then release. Okay, so if we're going to select this one, this is already divided into 2. So we've used the knife tool to divide the letter T into 2. So let's undo. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to group the characters on the first half, the MUL, and the half of the letter T. So using the selection tool, select, right click, then group. So these letters are already, or characters are already in group. And the other half, select the other half of characters, then right click, then group. Okay, so this is the second half of the text. Okay, we can remove the ruler guide again. Just click on the ruler guide, then drag it. Okay, let's ungroup first. So remove the ruler guide. Okay, let's group this one again. Okay, so we have the two halves of the text that we created earlier. So we're going to place those two halves into a perspective grid. So go to the perspective grid, or Shift P. Okay, so this is your perspective grid. You can change how the perspective looks like. Okay, so always remember, when you click the perspective grid, you have the icon on the upper left corner. So you can select the portion of the grid. So let's say this is, by default, that is the left grid. So this is the portion of the left grid, the blue one. We're going to click the right grid. That is the portion which is the orange grids. And the horizontal grid, which is the portion below. Okay, the green one is the portion below. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to use the perspective selection tool or the Shift V. So kindly select the perspective selection tool, then click on the left grid. So we're going to position the first half on the blue grid, so which is the left grid. So make sure that is selected on the icon, on the perspective grid icon. So again, use the perspective selection tool, then click, then move it on the grid. You can now resize. Okay, so do the same thing on the other half, but this time make sure the right grid is selected. Again, click on the right grid so that the orange grid is selected. So meaning to say the second half would be placed on the right grid. So again, using the perspective selection tool, click, then drag. Then you can now resize. Okay. So that is how the perspective grid works. Okay. So always make sure that the required grid is selected, whether it's a left grid, right grid, or horizontal grid. Okay. If you wanted to remove the grid lines, you can always close this icon or hide grid. Okay. So we now have divided the text into half and place it on grids. Okay, so that's how the perspective grid works. Okay, so that would be our part 3 of our lesson for Illustrator. So that is all about text, creating outline on text, and creating text on a shape or a path, and also perspective grid.